We do not know why we are here. We do not know who built the silo. We do not know why everything outside the silo is the way it is. We do not know when it will be safe to go outside. We only know that day is not this day. This is the reality for people living in the silo. After their third attempt at having a baby with no success, Allison Becker starts looking into why her and her husband, Sheriff Holston Becker, are not having any luck. Are the mysteries of the silo related? Welcome to Road Goes Ever On and On. Today, Sterling and I will be talking about the hit Apple TV show Silo, Episode 1, so spoilers ahead. We do not know why you are not subscribed. We do not know why you do not like this video. All we know is that you are here and we are happy to have you and we want to keep bringing you more content. So if you hit that like and subscribe button and turn on that bell for notifications, we'll be giving you more content. And with that, Sterling, let's talk about Silo. This is a great show. I'm really digging it. One thing I'm really liking is the world that has been set up inside of the silo. What are your thoughts on that?
It's an interesting world. So one of the things that is kind of interesting about this is like how they're giving us information about maybe the ability to produce with like homemade stuff. There's a lot of homemade stuff, right?
Right.
Like, I didn't see any real pictures. I saw paintings and drawings, you know?
Which is very interesting, right? We have computers down there, but we don't have... And we have something that can record things.
Right.
Like the screen, but yet we don't have any pictures.
And then, like, people have, like, these handmade mugs instead of, you know, mass-produced. Like, it seems like certain capabilities don't exist, while at times it seems like some of those capabilities should be able to exist.
Right, like, who makes their clothes? But we see things like they have a full agriculture level where they're, you know, producing cows and crops. But what's interesting is there's certain things definitely being taught because Allison doesn't recognize birds. She said there's something flying, like when she's describing the thing that she saw. She said there's something flying in this video, or however she talks about it. Wait, did you get that mug from the silo?
Did I get this mug from the silo?
There isn't wine here. Then I want to go out.
I noticed that like the mugs were kind of like, you know, on the jokey side of things, you know. So like the sheriff and his wife had a mug that said mine and also mine, and then she at her office, hers said, I stole this from the sheriff.
Right. I noticed that too. I wonder. So a part of me thinks that, you know, a lot of the reason we see drawings and like the mugs is I don't feel like there's a lot to do down in the silo for like recreation. Like we see at one point his co-sheriff, I don't know, deputy or whatever.
A deputy, Deputy Martins.
Deputy Martins, he was drawing the stairs of the silo.
Yes.
So I think it's something to pass time for them.
But I also feel like there's enough people out there that are lazy that would want to just like purchase something. And you know, instead, like there is a market, you know, so you should be able to purchase things, but it seems like maybe the ability to like mass produce versus like handcraft, you know, that maybe there just isn't. I'm curious about that. It was very interesting. In their house there was a quilt that had like their, you know, possibly like their marriage date. The instruments that we saw some of the performers, you know, using seemed very like cobbled together. You know?
Right. I will say that the silo does. It's weird because it seems like it's a bit in the past, like it's stuck in, like like some of the things are a little bit more crude, but
Right.
they also do seem to be a little bit more advanced. Like when we see them putting on the suit that they send her out in.
But like, what's the purpose of that suit? I kind of feel like the suit maybe is there to help with maybe like faking the whole thing, because if you have the suit, you could have an actor portray certain actions in a suit, and then all you have to do is like digitally put the face inside of this tiny screen. So like that
Well,
might be a smart trick to have to change less.
right. So I think when we saw Allison put on the helmet for the first time, it looked like her face changed. Like you could not tell that it was her face when the sheriff was looking directly at her. But when she went outside to clean, her face was clear as day. And I'm wondering if that like is what takes the picture of the face to project on there, and maybe that's why they have no pictures so that nobody questions a recording.
Interesting. Okay, so like other parts of like world building, like the actual silo itself. You mentioned something about like the different levels, like they have like agriculture, you know, they have farming, like there's cows. I thought it's interesting because they showed a little bit, but also like held back on some of the scope, so you can't quite tell how big things are.
We
Um,
do know a couple, like, just based on some statements made by characters, we have an idea of how at least tall it is. So
okay,
we saw
I
that.
go ahead.
Well, because level 70, when he was when she went down to go repair that thing, she was going down to level 70. He died on level 120, so we know it's at least
Oh, that's
120
right.
levels.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about the levels, about like if you're closer to the top or the bottom, like are you more affluent at the top?
I don't know. It I so and we do know it's big because like it did take, over a or it took did take like a day to get from, the towards the top. I assume that cafeteria that we see is kind of like towards the top, if not the
Ye-
top.
the I think it's the mayor, and I forgot her name. She said when they were sending out Allison that they were going to need, rooms available for people to come stay at the top, and they were going to have to do a lottery system in the cafeteria to see who gets to watch her do the cleaning. And she knew that it was going to be super crowded because they haven't done a cleaning in a long time.
Right. It's it's an interesting world that they're kind of putting together. I did have one. I don't know if I like. I don't want to be a science nerd and poke like too many holes,
Poke
but
'em.
I did. You know, and I'm sure that some of this will kind of be explained. Like where they're getting their energy from for something that large. But actually, like the thing that kind of was the most interesting to me was that early shot where they pan and they do show like the agriculture. If you're in this situation, and maybe resources are easy to come by, maybe they have all the energy they need, but if not, I feel like I'm not a vegetarian, but this would be the time to force vegetarianism on people. I don't remember what the statistic is, but like the amount of energy that it takes to feed a cow, and then the amount of energy that you get out of that cow, it is staggering the difference in how much more resources that takes if you just feed on what the cow feeds on versus having to feed the cow and then feeding on the cow itself. You know,
Right. It takes a
it
lot to feed cows.
It takes a lot. Just animals in general, like they everything you always lose energy at every step, like it dissipates through things like heat, so
Right.
that like there's always energy loss anytime that there's middle steps. So you want to go if you want to be as efficient as possible, it's like sun to plant, plant to mouth, boom. That's like the least amount of energy.
Right. Huh.
It would be easy to enforce too. Like
Right.
just don't grow animals and now there's not it's not like you would have to like have a law about eating meat. Like you just don't provide it.
Right. And the cost like of energy loss that you're talking about for like a cow versus a chicken or even fish, like a having a giant tank, is significantly different, and still she didn't know what birds were.
Right.
They have cows but not chickens.
Well, I mean, so like we heard that the whatever it was where like the people rose up against that happened over 140 or at exactly 140 years ago.
6 minutes and 6 seconds past the sixth hour 140
Right.
years ago.
And then on top of that, and that's just when that happened, theoretically they had been living underground for an undisclosed amount of time before that. That's just when there was this like uprising,
The rebellion,
rebellion.
where they burned all books, all hard drives. They got rid of everything. And I do think it is tied to pictures as well, of why we can't have pictures.
I could
Like,
I could see that, and I can see that. Like I feel like this is kind of in that red flag territory of like some of the weird things with like this silo and you know things that set off alarm bells. I thought some of the interesting things that we saw as far as like the celebration, was they're like banners. There's like a slide that they set up and like take down. This is obvious. I've like been doing this every year for 140 years, right?
right.
Market was interesting. Like there's not a lot of space in this, so it feels like a lot of those like open markets that you see in like narrow alleys,
Mm-hmm.
and like smaller like European villages versus like, you know, in necessarily like the US. And I think that's like just a because of the like the space requirements they have.
And we see they
Um,
have like couriers that run up and down, and like
yeah,
there's a whole, whether you're on the left or the right, and people
right.
running and transporting messages and other items.
Like square coins, like they gave us some some clues to this kind of world, like and it does feel kind of lived in. We do see shots in the neighborhood with, kids playing and like plants on very small outdoor areas that people have. They've they've done a little bit of kind of like interesting world building that I think there's still a lot I assume we have to learn,
Yes.
but they've teased out a few things and tried to make this place feel lived in. Like even when they did Freedom Day, the song that they sang,
Oh yeah.
they like certain customs that they do. Like what is it? Like they cheer and then they make noise, and then there's
The
silence,
silence.
and they like float those like lantern hot air balloons. It was kind of an interesting introduction into this world. And I did like that little bit of kind of world building that we saw in this.
Well, I thought one of the best framing devices for the episode was a bit of their world building of like how to have a baby in the silo, where you just are
Right.
like put on a list, and you're like everybody's put on birth control, and you have a year to try to get pregnant, and if you can't get pregnant, then you're off the list and you can go a certain number of tries before you're a certain age. Like, and I also really liked how they used that to kind of jump through time, where you would be
Right.
focused on the timer and it would just count down. Very neat device to show that we have moved a year in silo time.
And that message came through on silo mail, so they have an intranet instead of like an internet that connects, groups of computers to like the outside world. This is like an internal connection, which I think, yes, there is some size to this, but it does mean that this is small enough of a size that I think that would be much easier to be able to like monitor.
I mean, 120 floors, that seems like a lot. I mean, I guess that's less than the whole Earth, but
And you can put like keyword filter. Anyway, I think that's kind of getting into one of the next topics, which is like what would have been some of like the red flags that have come up in this show, because obviously things aren't perfect, right?
I mean, huge red flag is when you pull a birth control that you think was out of you already and it was sitting there. It's a pretty big red flag.
Dawn wasn't a big fan of the fact that like that was proof. She gave that to her. Well, she showed that to her husband. That was proof, and it still took him like 2 years after that.
Well,
Um,
well, it. I think that lends credence to like how brainwashed the people of the silo are, because her question to him when he was like, "Oh, I took the thing to the doctor," and she's like,
yep,
"What did you say? What did he say? It was a placeholder. It was XYZ, you know?" And
yep,
she's like, "Okay, that's what I thought he would say." Like,
yes,
that,
exactly. And that's kind of how I felt, where it's like he and on top of that, he's so, as somebody that needs to maintain the peace, he is so focused on in the system and making sure that he is following the rules, other people are following the rules, that like his first instinct is to go to people above him to understand things. Like, why is this happening? Let me ask my superior. So in this case, it's like, why is this? Let me ask the doctor. Oh, boom, there's the explanation. Rather than like, I'm sure he's a very clever person that, when he has to do kind of like detective work and like put pieces together, I'm sure that that's the area that he is able to do that. But I think he very much works inside of the rules.
well, I'm I'm kind of curious of even what his job is, really. Like, I think that he is just kind of a figure, and I don't think he really has power.
That so that gets to another one of the kind of the red flags that I thought was interesting. When we were in Gloria's house, Gloria's the one who gives advice on
Mm-hmm.
pregnancies. She says something about like judicial listening.
They have
And what
listeners.
yes. And what I thought was interesting about that was, and I know that you don't necessarily have to, follow this everywhere, but at least where we come from, there are three separate branches that, have their own sets of power, and they have checks and balances in order to make sure that there's not like one powerful group that just runs everything, and is kind of like a dictatorship. So it's like these checks and balances make sure that there's a certain level of things being done properly in the
Mm-hmm.
system. And while in where we come from, judicial may approve that for the police, that is not something that judicial does. So to me, that is kind of like judge, jury, executioner, where you have, too much power being in one area. Like the very group that is meant to try you in a non-biased way is the same group that is trying to pin the crime on you by eavesdropping.
Interesting.
Like at least where we come from, those two things would be split.
Right. Right. But I don't know. It does seem like what is he doing? Like, on a day to day basis. Like, what is he doing as the sheriff? He just seems to be like a figure. Like, everybody seems to be afraid of Judicial. It seems like Judicial's the one that punishes people. Judicial is the one
Right.
that sets down what you can and can't do. Judicial has the listeners, like you were saying.
Right.
It's. I think that it's just a title for him. It's just a thing for everybody in the silo to see that there is a sheriff that's keeping the peace. But I think it's just a title.
I think that there may be like an arm of Judicial, which is not like, rather than being a separate entity that has like checks and balances. I think that they are like they would be probably like the force that apprehends people, the force that potentially plants some of the like bugs and things like that in order to be able to listen, the group that gathers the intelligence that is used against people, like, but rather than being something that should be separate from the body that tries people, like, I think that this is possibly an arm of Judicial. Is my guess. So I don't think it's like, I don't think he does nothing, because
I mean, he might do
like
like
he has cells, and he's probably held some of the people that have, been that last person that his like wife talked about, that was like, so and so swore up and down that they wouldn't clean that. That was probably something that like somebody he captured.
I don't think he did.
And
because here's the thing. So why
okay.
I don't think he did. So, okay, let's think of it this way. He is a sheriff, right?
Yes.
There's only been like 3 people that have gone out to clean. That the bodies are there. That's like what they made it imply. They were like, look, a couple people have cleaned. Okay. I don't think he has the authority to give punishment to people. It does seem that every time that somebody's gone out to clean, it has been of their own volition. Like, somebody has said, I want to go out. So maybe he does stuff like...
I'm going to disagree with that, because at one point somebody said, you could be sent to clean for that.
Right.
So
But we've only seen like 3 people.
But there are crimes that you can commit that you can be sent out for. And I think that like, so one of the red flags for me was the mayor saying that nobody wants a cleaning, but and then she said something along the lines of like, people need to remember. And I think that she potentially is on kind of the bad side of things, and that she knows that the best way to control people is through, or she believes that the best way to control people is through fear. And so, like, there hasn't been... People are getting complacent. There's not that fear there of, like, punishment for things.
Well, but still nobody's been...
The screen is super dirty.
But still nobody was punished. She just asked to be let out. So, like, even now, nobody's been...
That's a crime, though.
Well,
like, to a certain, like, I think like those that is.
I don't think it's a
those
crime.
Those are like unforgivable words that when you say it, you can't, because you can't. Once you say those words, you can't apologize and say, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. Like, now that I'm in jail and being in prison,
But, so, to me it seems like... Okay, so if Allison Becker is correct, and that it is green out there, and she did say the only way she would clean is if it was green out there and lush, and she cleaned, which either we're not seeing accurate video,
Right. Yep.
and then maybe she found lush and green. If you could just send everybody out, right? And everybody's like, you want people to kind of fear going outside.
Yes.
And it seems like they have enough fear already with, like, what he said, like, if you have a relic of the past, you could be sent to clean for that.
Yes.
But it also does seem like they're so afraid that, like, they don't even need that threatening, and only the people that go out are people that say, I want to go out. And then they're let out, and then they're shown to be killed to keep that fear going. But it doesn't... I don't know. And maybe I'm wrong.
I think three... So, I mean, I agree with you that, like, there's 3 bodies that we see.
Right.
And that 3 is not a lot to, like, hold fear over 140 years. I don't know.
I don't either. But it is with that hard drive that Alison Becker and... I forget his name.
It's George Wilkins.
Oh, George Wilkins is his name.
And
Gotcha.
I'm bummed. I liked him.
I did too. I liked him a lot. But they looked at that one file that said something cleaning, and it was before 140 years ago.
It was from year 97. Whatever that means. And it didn't have an apostrophe.
Interesting.
Which also is kind of interesting because that... Does that point to, you know, like, there was an event that drove people into the silo. Like, maybe at some point the Earth's surface was not okay to live on. And it's almost like calendars maybe started from that point. So it's like this cleaning maybe happened 97 years after that, and we see that it's like beautiful.
So that it became a barren wasteland. It became beautiful. Like, it became a barren wasteland. Everybody went inside. While they were inside, it became not a wasteland. Became beautiful. And now it's a wasteland again?
And no, I think it's still beautiful. I think there's something we'll get to that when we like talk about like theories and questions, but I think it's beautiful up there.
So why show a cleaning? So to me, there's that video that says cleaning, which means they're out there cleaning the sensor, is what I would assume. Why would there be a cleaning video that shows beautiful landscape with birds and trees?
I mean, like this might have been like owned by somebody from like Judicial. Like, who knows who? The directory was like library, so this is
right.
This sounds like archival footage. You know, like I don't think it's something that like a rando had got a hold of. Like, it was...
I think it might have been a rebel that had it. Because...
They might have gotten it.
Maybe, yeah.
It wasn't, like... They weren't the ones who recorded it, you know? Like, that... Right. I don't necessarily think that was, like, their hard drive. Or if it was, the information was transferred from... Like, I do think that information came from people that knew already that it's beautiful out there. And were possibly like hiding that information to control the populace.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's very curious. I did think it was interesting that at Allison's work, she got in trouble for posting the article without getting it approved. And she was told it was because IT articles have to be approved.
Right.
Which implies that not all articles have to be approved.
IT articles do. Anything that works on computers.
Yes. And that's one of those things where people could learn information that they shouldn't, or they maybe could like hack into things if they have information about like how to hack or how to
Yeah.
do like that seems like dangerous information from the government's perspective.
Right.
So it
And
almost that kind of makes me feel like maybe there isn't a separation of well, like freedom of speech. Maybe.
I mean, well, I don't think there is freedom of speech because technically, if you say I want to go outside, you're going outside.
I mean, you could argue that like there are limits on freedom of speech. Like you can't say fire in a crowded
Right.
space.
But just imagine just being like hanging out with somebody and be like, man, I want to
Mm.
go outside. You're going to
Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
gulags.
yeah.
I just
Yes,
like
yes.
you don't have
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
that a little bit of freedom.
yeah.
The so like, but also going back to those red flags, isn't it a red flag that they say that all the information before was burned and destroyed, and yet if you
Right.
find information from before a relic and you decipher it, you could get in trouble for that. That's a
It
red
just
flag.
just having it
Yeah, having anything
can
from
get
the
you in
before
trouble.
time.
That's that's wild. Like and that wouldn't even necessarily be your fault. That's like my dad was in Sarajevo, for a period of time,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like war riddled, and so a lot of mines have been planted, and farmers will find these mines and need to get like there's not enough manpower to remove all of this stuff, and they need to be able to work their land, and so they'll sometimes bring these in, and that would almost be like if you are caught with a mine, like you will be punished. And it's like, I didn't plant that there.
Yeah, this is already here. I'm just trying to get it out of here.
Right. Like that's you I don't know, something might have been passed down from like your great 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 grandfather that's been sitting in the attic this whole time. You didn't realize it was like from the before times, you know? And now you could be in trouble just for having it.
Yeah.
Not for like hiding it or going into it, but like just for having it. That's a weird one.
Do you know what Silo reminds me of?
What?
It reminds me of Attack on Titan.
Interesting.
If you 'cause you've seen Attack on Titan, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
So it's like they're in the walls, right?
yeah.
And they just know outside will kill them. They can't go
Mm,
outside. And there's people that are within the walls that know the secret of the walls and the Titans outside.
yeah.
And I, it just is giving me a very parallel vibe, and I'm loving it.
It's so funny you say this because we just did a live episode on Wild Blue Yonder, Doctor Who's like second special, and honestly, there were a few of the scenes there with like this body horror that actually kind of reminded me of Attack on Titan, and I didn't know if that was too niche to bring up, and so I ended up not mentioning it. But
Nothing's too niche
but
for us.
yes, I was actually kind of thinking about that for a different series. This actually reminded me a little bit of us,
Oh.
where like the U.S., not you and me.
Oh,
My apologies.
well, I don't care now. I don't care about the
Um,
U.S.
but like I kind of wonder if this like terrorist attack, of the rebellion, which I have kind of ideas on that, but if that open the door to a crackdown kind of like the Patriot Act, except much more stringent, where it's like people will gladly give up some of their liberties if they feel like they're protecting themselves. So it's like after this thing, people are like, "Oh, I'm so scared, like I need the protection of the government, so I'm okay with these laws that are being created." Because it does seem like a lot possibly changed after that 140 years ago, like whatever it is that happened. And I'm wondering if they weren't that authoritarian before,
Hmm.
and now they kind of are.
Well, I feel like that has a lot to do with just theories in general of the silo and
It
what it's
okay.
for.
Let's get into theories and questions. And actually, like before I jump off from that, I did want to give kind of one little shout out, which is like speaking of kind of um the Patriot Act. I do wonder whether or not this event that happened, whether or not it was faked, or I definitely think that it is like not true what we understand of it now. Which reminds me of what we were just doing with Foundation, where it's like history is written by the victors. And we got an interesting comment from one of our viewers, Lily, that kind of had to do with, authoritarian governments that kind of rewrite history. And to a certain extent, like this, I kind of feel like this is like that. Like, I think that they've changed things
Right.
in
Well,
order to do certain things.
well, Gloria even said, like, did the rebels burn the information or was it judiciary? We don't know. Like,
Right.
we don't know. It's just what they told us, and we have to accept it.
Was there even a rebellion?
Right. It's just what they told
Like is
us.
who knows if like they didn't start this thing themselves in order to be able to squash it, in order to be able to like create this like
Patriot Act.
thing where they can add to their powers, you know?
Yeah. And so, okay, going back to thinking about like keeping tabs on people, right?
Yep.
With Allison, she
Yep.
was. Gloria was talking to her and was like, they don't want people like you having kids. Just like they didn't want people like me having
Right.
kids.
Yeah.
And the guy, you said his name and I forgot his name. I didn't remember his name because he dies.
His name it's George Wilkins.
George Wilkins.
George Wilkins.
Sorry, George. But he was
Sorry, George.
like he wanted to meet her specifically. Like it's like there's some. It seems like people know about her being this kind of like questioning authority type person.
I mean, like she's got the mug that says like I stole this from the sheriff, right? And to me that is I I don't necessarily think that that's a sign that you're a rebel, but it's definitely like a wink against, like from the sheriff, like the power, you know?
So I'm wondering, do you think that marriages are arranged there? Like they can tell when people are having babies and maybe they put her specifically with the sheriff to keep her in order.
Interesting, because if so, they were very lucky because I do feel like there is love in that relationship.
Definitely.
So that's an interesting theory. I think that that's a
I just
possibility.
I already see them saying when people can procreate.
Right.
So to me I do feel like they would want to keep stock of who's getting together maybe. I don't know. But to me if I had somebody that was a bit of a troublemaker, I would if I had control of who they marry, I'd set them
Right.
up with the sheriff.
Interesting. I thought the vent is in their place is a room for like possible theorizing because at the very beginning of the episode he's unscrewing it, right? Or
Yeah.
he's fiddling with it.
Yeah. He's doing something.
I think he has some kind of information in there. And I think that is information for after he leaves.
Yes. And I do think that that's tied with what with the flowers. Because he wrote the note with the
Yes, that's
flowers.
it. I was just gonna say that. I think he gives Deputy Marn the note saying, like, he doesn't give it, but like he leaves the note for Deputy Marnes saying, you know, put out 2 sets of flowers, which will put Deputy Marnes in his house, and potentially maybe like the AC's not working or something like that, or like there's a rattling sound in the vent, and that leads them to do that, because I think at that point he realized there are people listening and it's not safe to talk.
Do you think it's the hard drive in there? We don't know what happened to the hard drive.
We don't.
And
we
they
don't know what
searched
happened to the hard drive.
George Wilkins' apartment or stall. They searched his stall and they could not find it.
Right. And I guess at this point, like, Holston would have had a year after meeting the engineer before he said, I want to go out.
And he's investigating this guy's death. I think he finds the hard drive.
Okay. That's okay, because that's kind of one of the big questions that I had, and kind of what I think is going to be one of the big barriers that we're going to see coming up is Allison has gone out. Obviously, the sheriff is going to go out. And everybody that goes out dies, which means that at bare minimum, they never come back inside.
Right.
So I think that even if it turns out that everything is perfect, there is a reason why people haven't come back inside. And that means it's going to be tough to get information to those people to say, like, hey, it's great out here. You all should come out. Like, they're lying to you.
Yeah.
And that actually kind of reminds me of one of the shows that we were doing, Severance, where it's like there's this difficulty, of communicate, like, information that you have on the outside, communicating that with the people on the inside.
Innies and outies.
And so I think that's so I think, unfortunately, like, Deputy Marnes, maybe he'll become Sheriff Marnes, is, if he is lucky enough to learn this stuff, he's going to have to learn it because somebody left him information, or he's going to have to learn it the hard way himself. Because I don't think that they're going to really be able to, maybe until towards like the end of the season, I don't think there's going to be that communication, which is going to be kind of like a crappy thing to now know what's going on outside.
Right. So, well, and I mean, Rashida Jones plays the main Allison girl, and I don't feel like, just kind of like what I said in Foundation about Jared Harris being cast, like, I feel like they're gonna come back, and I don't, unless it's about flashbacks, like how they met beforehand, maybe a little bit of her history. The only way I feel like we'll see her again is if she is good on her promise and comes back for sheriff.
I mean, the sheriff goes out to her, so I think I think we'll see the two of them, but I don't think for quite some time that they will know how to get back inside. Yeah. Because I think that the lock on the silo, it's a two-way thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's to keep the people inside locked in, and to create this law and order about, like, oh, be scared of the outside because it's radioactive or whatever. You'll die if you go out there. But then I think it's also locked to keep that secret from coming in, so that the people from the outside can't come back. Or there's got to be something else preventing, like, why hasn't anybody come back and said, like, knocked, guys?
I do think they don't let them back in. So there's the tunnel. So this is what I noticed that's very interesting. So there's the cafeteria window, which is the same as the window in Holding 3. Like, they're the same screen.
Yes.
So it's clearly a recording.
Definitely in cell 3 it is, because we actually saw it close enough that we could see pixels. It is possible but not likely that the one in
Well,
the cafeteria is real. I think it's recording.
well, it has to be cafeteria's fake too because she walks up to it and she's as big as the screen in the cafeteria. You know, if it's a
Mm.
window, she would be a normal human
I
cleaning the
mean,
window.
what if the radiation made her grow big?
That's a possibility.
Boom.
But there
But
is one window, but you can't see outside through that window, and that's on the way outside. When you can see her going out, there's a window that you can
oh
see,
yeah,
but it only shows the ramp, so you can't see outside.
right. Yep. And a double door in order to like decontaminate, which I think gives them like extra protection to prevent people from coming back in, because I think that's I think that's what they're scared of, is the information that can come back.
So,
And that's why, like you said, the window there doesn't actually see the outside, and you
yeah.
see that kind of spiral.
And there's a giant flame in there, meaning if somebody were to come back in, they could light them on fire, instantly kill them, claim they were just trying to kill the whatever bad environment it
Yep.
is, and their secret is still safe.
Yes.
Okay, I've
Yes.
this is what I want to know. What your thoughts are on?
Okay.
I would say that we saw three different people with authority that could possibly be in on this, more so than the sheriff.
I don't trust the mayor.
The mayor, well, so I go back and forth with the mayor. And I don't know if this has any correlation, but all of these people either had light gray or dark gray hair, meaning that these people have been in for a long time. So they might all have. So the mayor's one of them. Though I am on the fence
I mean,
if she
it's
knows
been
anything or not.
140 years. Like, they're like the people that witnessed this, the rebellion, are dead.
Right, but these are their parents. So the mayor, her parents were probably alive during the rebellion.
Yes.
So that's just one generation of saying like, hey, this is the secret, you know, or yada yada yada.
Yeah.
So I think the mayor,
Okay. The mayor.
the doctor,
I mean, clearly the doctor has inside knowledge. Whether or not he knows the big picture.
right, but also her boss of the IT thing.
I think he's just a dick.
He might be just a dick, but these were three people of authority that were all challenging parts of what they were challenging: the birth, the IT,
Yeah.
and then the legal authority, mayor and sheriff. But I don't know if the mayor is in on it because she was trying to plead with her husband, the husband, Holston. He, she was trying to give him outs to not make her go outside. Like she was trying to, and to me, somebody that she wants, if she wanted her to out because she knows secrets of the silo, why would she try to find ways out for her? And she legitimately seemed sad when she saw her die. She could be a great actress.
I think she knew the futility of trying that. And so because she knew it was futile, it was going to be easy for her to be like, "Oh, why don't we try this? Why don't we try that?" And even if those people had been desperate enough to try those things, been like, "Yeah, yeah, let's take it before the council and say that she didn't mean to say it." There were so many witnesses, or like she didn't
Right.
actually say that, like there are so many witnesses. We know that she said it,
Right.
and then she tries to throw out something else. Like, you can challenge that. Like, she knows that Allison wants out. So at this point, she can say, like, why don't you try and say that Allison didn't actually mean that?
Yeah.
It's like, well, then Allison's going to rebut it. So it's like she gets to play the good guy very easily by saying, why don't we, well, let's try a few things. Guys,
Okay,
we gotta, it's your wife.
so here's my question.
Yeah.
Who's ever in control of the silo,
Yes.
are they inside or outside?
That I don't know. Like, where does this tunnel at the bottom connect to?
Right. What is the tunnel? Does it connect to another silo?
And it,
I feel like the intro has very interesting symbolism. And I think
yes, the intro. Okay.
it might have hints to what might the role be of the people inside Silo. So there's a couple things that we see that, like, at one point we see a nautilus shell.
Yes.
Nautilus is a
In
cephalopod
comparison,
to the
yes.
stairs.
Yeah. I don't know if it was like, was it a Nautilus thing or was it like the golden ratio? Like I couldn't tell if it was like mathematics conspiracy type stuff or if it was like a Nautilus shell.
Well, so I do think it was a nautilus shell. It had
Okay.
very. It didn't look like that perfect sequence. It was just like it seemed like it was just like what a typical nautilus shell would look like. And so,
Okay.
could it be that the silo is there being a shell around these people defending them?
Or is it the very skeleton
Or is it the very skeleton? We see the
that
stairs
that
at one point
supports them?
looks like a spine.
Or is it both?
Or
Is
is
it
it
both
both?
the
Well, so here's so
it
the
is it possible that it was like it was intended for one thing and it became something else? You know,
could could be.
like if this was if at one point this was humanity's last hope and it has now become humanity's prison.
I I think they're doing something. So, two similar symbols in the intro
Yep.
that displayed them very differently, but it looked the same. At one
Okay.
point, the citizens looked like blood cells going up and
Ooh, I didn't
down,
notice that.
going up and down. So there's like two scenes. So there's the part
Yeah.
where it looks like a spine, and then shortly
Yeah.
after it looks like like the people are like blood cells going up and down for the silo. So it's like, oh, they're like the inside of the silo. They're the health of it. They're what's making the silo function. But then at the end, you see
I mean,
a
like the blood would be the thing that like keeps it alive.
right. So I do think that it is keeping it alive and it is doing something, because the second time we see the people inside during the intro, it this time it looks like an ant colony, and they're all ants, like worker ants doing something. So that's why I think that the people of Silo need to be in Silo, not that they're trapped in a prison, but they need to be in there to
They're
get something
performing a
done.
function.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, so I was originally thinking this is like an authoritarian society, and it's like they want to have power, and so they're doing certain things to make people allow them to have that power, and then by abusing that power, they can scare people into continuing to let them use that power. But that's interesting that there is a purpose.
I
That
think
it's
there is a
not just
function.
about holding power, but about doing something. And the people in it are necessary.
And in the intro, we do see a beautiful tree that grows. It drops an apple, and the apple lands on the silo. So I'm thinking it's beautiful outside, and they're doing a function.
Interesting.
Those are my thoughts.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot.
But I don't know.
I don't know either. Not the intro, but little bit of additional kind of
Okay.
symbolism. So one symbol we see pretty often is like the people holding hands in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like on the sheriff's arm. I think it's on the sheriff's badge. It's
Holding
in
three.
it's on the door for holding three, I think. And surrounding that, there is a circle which has like a thin line around about a third of it, and then like uh, it goes into like almost like two circles, a larger outside one, a smaller inside one, you know, but kind of like medium sized difference between the two. And then the last third is like a large difference between the two circles. And all of that is kind of like encasing the people holding hands. That same circle with like the three different sizes that go around it has different symbols in it in different areas. At, so above the cafeteria, there is a tree inside of that circle. In the holding cell, as we see Allison being walked, we see that there's actually a number of these. There's like a cog. There's early on in the episode, there's a door that has that symbol on both sides of it, like the circle. And there's what kind of looks like a sun. And then going back to when Allison was leaving, there was, I don't know how to describe it. I'm going to call it kind of like something swirly looking. My apologies if you're doing, even if you're doing visuals, like, unless we throw it up, if it's audio only, there's something kind of like swirly looking. And I think that this is going to kind of come back at some point. I don't know what it means, but I think the fact that the circle is being reused in all of these and there's something in the center of it, we're going to see some significance to that.
I wonder if they're all just cogs in a machine.
Possibly. Yeah, you know, and I thought like, so the sheriff actually, like, I think all of the people in the sheriff's department have that, like, the people holding hands
Mm-hmm.
on like their sleeve and on their badge, which to me is, I mean, that's, I love the idea of like, I don't know if it's peace or something like that, happiness, you know, like, let's all work together. A little bit weird for like the enforcement arm of the government, because they're more of kind of like brute force. They're less of like holding your hand as much as it is like twisting your arm behind your back and like forcing you to the ground. And I'm not trying to disparage the police. I'm just trying to say like they do have to use force to enforce the law. So that's kind of like interesting symbolism.
I did. I just when I saw that symbol, I just thought that that was their like symbol for the silo. Like that's just like their American flag in a way. That's
Okay.
just how I took
Okay.
that symbol. Like that symbol of the people and
Yeah.
I don't think I noticed that there were a bunch of different ones.
Oh
So
yeah.
I'll have to go back and look at that. I just thought it was the same symbol over and over again.
Oh yeah.
So now I'm very curious.
Oh yeah, there's more of them. This show is very tight shots for the most part because it's like there's not a lot of space
Mm-hmm.
for them. Like, if you think about where the camera has to be in relation to other buildings, you can't do like cinematic shots, you know?
Right.
Everything is going to be kind of tighter because that helps make it feel cramped. Like, even if it is a large world, like hall wise, it definitely isn't wide wise.
You know what else this reminds me of, actually?
What else does it remind you of, actually?
Did you ever see Snowpiercer?
Yes.
This kind of
I haven't
reminds
seen
me
the show. I've only seen the
the movie.
movie. Yeah, yeah,
It kind of reminds me of Snowpiercer. There was a rebellion.
yeah.
There's the top of the car. Well, I mean, I don't know. That's why I kind of was thinking about the. Are there different classes, top and bottom?
I mean that makes sense like, and you generally think of the top, like who are the people that are on top, and this is like physically could be that, and that actually makes a lot of sense. Actually didn't catch the lottery part. That's
I only caught up my second watch through where she was like, "We'll have to have rooms. Like people are gonna come up." But it does seem like there's a lot of free reign. Like you can go up and down, but like if you don't have business down there, like why would you go down there?
right.
So maybe not. Maybe not a class.
Well, and no, I mean there are other ways to like restrict class. Like if maybe it costs money to, I mean, it very possibly costs money to rent or buy these spaces, and it potentially costs more the higher up that you go, which means that even if people can freely move up and down, if the shops up towards the top all sell handmade Louis Vuittons and shit like
Right.
that, like if you can't afford it, what's the fucking point? And yeah, there'll always be some people would like go up and window shop, but they'll also be clearly noticed by the people that are there and kind of poo-pooed. Like, that like when you walk into a place and like you're not wearing the right stuff and they instantly
Yeah.
give you that look of like, oh,
Well, and it another reason I was thinking about that class thing is that at the end we saw they went down to the generator to talk to that girl,
the engineer, yeah, yeah.
the engineer, and it seems like
Juliet Nichols.
Juliet Nichols, and it does seem
Juliet Nichols.
like they are doing the tedious, not fun work down there. Like that seems like the bowels of like a ship. Like you're the steam engine person
Yep.
that's fueling the ship to
Yeah.
continue. Like
Yeah.
another thing I want to know about the pictures, she has on her desk
Oh, yeah, okay, yes.
a
Yes.
picture of the sheriff
Yeah.
and someone else.
There's like a whole family section of her wall that I didn't have time to unpack and I didn't understand the meaning of. So it's like,
Well, so
like right now, I don't know if there's a point in pointing out some of the stuff that was on not that shot, but there was another shot I think before that. It's
so
like, who the fuck are these people?
there's a couple pictures. So there's in his office, there's like he's got some shelves with pictures of them that are painted. In their house, they have some on shelves, and then they have a whole wall, and it does
Yes.
kind of look like there was like a grandparent there, maybe.
Yeah,
in one of
there's
them.
like there's older people, there's younger people, and it's like, but they don't have kids, so it's like, are these nieces and nephews, or are they younger pictures of people? Like, who are all of these people, or is it just to show that they have a family and to let you see that they use paintings instead of? So it's like for me, it was a little too early to theorize on that. It's like
Oh
I
no!
put a pin in it.
Instantly,
I want to come back.
I think the because there were so many shots of it, I think it's important. Like it would, and like we've seen so many people drawing. Like they showed the deputy specifically drawing. Like I do think drawing has a huge part in this somehow.
What if? Okay, so what if drawing is something that people pick up because of the lack of pictures, and not for the reason you think, but because pictures make it cheap and easy to capture a moment so that anybody can do it. And so you don't need artistic skills. But if you don't have pictures, then your only option for capturing a moment is like putting the time and effort into making it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can either do that yourself or you can pay somebody for their time and effort. And generally, paying people for their time and effort when it's laborious is expensive. Like, that's art, basically, at that point.
Yeah.
So, an art isn't as cheap as, like, photos, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, maybe that's just a byproduct of if my only two options are pay somebody so I can have this memory, and it's extremely expensive to do that, or just like scribble on a regular basis so I can try and capture some of those on my own. Like, I don't know, maybe I'll scribble some so
Well,
I can
and
capture some of that on my own.
I mean, it does seem like they have a lot of free time. Doesn't seem like there's magazines coming out. I haven't seen a single book.
Ooh.
So, it doesn't seem like they're reading a lot.
There aren't TVs
No TVs. So there's not
that
a
I
lot of
saw.
free time. So, like, I feel like drawing's like the
There's
only
not so
thing.
there's not much media besides maybe letters from couriers.
That's
Like, you're
about it.
talking no magazines, books, TVs.
Yeah, I don't. It
What?
feels like it would be very boring in there. And maybe
Ooh.
that's why there's a lot of those like sculptures as well on in a lot of those things that the houses like in Gloria's house and Allison's
Yeah.
house there were different wood sculptures or other kind of sculptures, and I wonder if like people just were like whittling.
Yeah. Interesting.
I can't wait to see that. But with that, I think our journey has come to an end. Thank you guys so much for joining along. Next week, we will be taking on Silo Episode 2, so come back and join us. I'm Mark. This is Sterling.
Thanks.